So I decided that for my little segment I wanted to do and a little offshoot that I wanted to complete, I wanted to talk to a couple of my friends who are, millennials in the workforce and people I know who've gotten into the business, just in life in general. And the first person I thought of to do was my great friend Dylan Fashball. And he now owns his own company called Smooth Technology based out of New York City. And it is probably the wildest story I've ever seen. It's about a guy who basically was, essentially homeless in New York City to owning his own company and working with Lady Gaga and Katy Perry and things of the like. And it's a great story that, I kind of wanted to go down the original path and, see what it was like millennials getting jobs and everything. But his was kind of a storied way around that and kind of how he broke the norm. But we also did touch upon, what it is like for, millennials to try to get jobs right now. And what are your thoughts about that? I want to see what your experience has been so far. Before we get into the huge thing with Dylan, the huge story, just give me a brief synopsis of what you think it's like. And maybe we can compare that to see what what Dylan's doing.
Well, first of all, I gotta say I'm excited to hear about your interview with Dylan because listen, you had me at Lady Gaga, obviously. That sold me. But two, when I think of today's, youngins as part of being that youngins, when it comes to jobs, I think the big thing is, how do you find a job that pays well? I think that's a huge struggle for a lot of young people is they find jobs that, hey, you have to have a master's degree, but it's $10 an hour. Or, hey, right. This is a full-time opportunity, but it's $30K a year. It really makes you think like, okay, sometimes you have to think about part-time jobs. And I think we're definitely in a part-time job economy, where there's a ton of part-time jobs and you kind of have to stack a few of them together. I know a lot of people in my age range who they don't have a full-time, but they do have 4 or 5 part-time jobs. And even me as an individual, I have my full-time, but then I have 5 part-time jobs, and some of those part-time jobs literally happen once, twice, 3 times a month, right? But, it's still income that, you kind of need to make things even. So
we've all been there. I've worked 7 days a week before.
Oh, I still almost work 7 days a week. Yeah.
Years on end. I worked 7 days straight, multiple jobs.
Mm-hmm. And so I think, there's like definitely, I think a lot of older people think of it like, oh, it's so easy. Go out there and get a job. But the truth of it is that there's not a lot of full-time jobs, because employers don't want to pay healthcare, which is another story, but another reason why healthcare should be, public, go through a government system. A lot of employers, they don't want to pay vacation. They don't want to pay these benefits. They make sure they hire people. Okay, you can do 30 hours a week and still be considered a part-time employee. So, and some might say, well, that's a good thing. Some might say that's a bad thing. To me, it's like if you're working 40 hours a week, you should be able to be fine. No matter what 40 hours you do, I believe if you work 40 a week, you should not have to stress about living in this country. But the truth is there's people who have to work 70, 80 hours a week to support themselves and maybe their families, and it barely cuts even, it's hard to save up money. Right. So that's kind of my takes. I think, you look at, how pay is stalled, the minimum wage is stalled. I mean, these are more sociological takes on the issue, but I'm curious to hear who you talk to about their journeys, because no two journeys are the same. When I graduated in 2016, I was not sure if I wanted to work in media. And I had to work part-time for 2 years before I got a full-time job in media. So that's not for everybody. There's some people who graduate college and have to get some kind of full-time job, right? They have to kind of have it figured out. I was lucky that I could, for a few years, balance on part-time jobs. So
yeah, you're going to love this for sure. And just to hear a story from going, from beginning to end and where it is now. And by the way, this is going to be the first of a couple I'm doing. So this is the first person I've talked to. It ended up being an extremely long interview because, well, I just honestly kept having questions upon questions upon questions. So Dylan is going to be the first of a couple people I'm going to talk to, but I think you're going to like his story. So let's just get right into it. And here we go. Hello, this is Paul Laux with Thoughts of the Roundtable. And as we said, Matt and I are doing our own little pieces, and this is going to be mine. And I've decided that I kind of want to talk to a couple millennials I know, and which is, I think, what is it, Dylan? From first guess, is it 80? Was it 85 to 94, something like that?
Something like that. I'm 91. So
okay, I am 1990, so we're smack dab in the middle of it. But yeah, so this series for me is going to be about millennials in the workforce, how they got to where they're at, what the job search was like, what they think about past job searches, and just everything in between the stories from good and bad. And as I said earlier, the first guest I have is my good friend Dylan Fashball. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening.
Hello. Good. All of those things to you as well, Paul.
And a little behind the scenes here, and full disclosures that Dylan and I were actually in a band at one point.
Hell yeah.
The Official Seals, which is still, I still get notifications that we need to update our info on Facebook. So maybe we need to do that. But you're literally the first person I wanted to talk to, and the first person I thought of when I came up with this project of, talking to millennials and how they got to where they're at in the world, because you have probably one of the most ridiculous stories that I can think of off the top of my head. And so go ahead and explain kind of what you do, and then we'll kind of roll on from there.
Yeah, so I have a very strange business that I own where a huge amount of what I do is making light up costumes for pop stars, and also making kind of these strange like experiential entertainment I don't even know how to describe it, like environments. It's like a lot of what I do is like making crazy live experiences for people on stage and off stage. And
well, go ahead.
I'm saying I've managed to work with a lot of big brands, and also most of the major pop divas out there as well.
I mean, it's crazy to think of, like, I think you're the only friend I have, and the only people around our age I know that actually owns their own business. So congratulations to that, because I literally think you're the only one I know of that has started their own business from scratch. But I got to know, like, when you were in high school, and from what I knew from you in college, you had never really mentioned anything about this. It was like, is this what you initially wanted to do, or is this something just kind of spurred out from nowhere? Or what? How did you get to where you're at, like the idea of it?
Yeah, so I've always been obsessed with electronics, and I've always been obsessed with programming. And in college and in high school, I think, in high school I started out doing a lot of modifying RC cars. I was really into X mods from Radio Shack. I don't know if anyone's ever played with those. They're awesome. And then I would always modify those to go really fast. I had this one that could go 30 miles per hour, and it was ridiculous because it's too small, and so it would just flip all the time. And so I was into that stuff, and it kind of convinced me to switch from going to school for music, which is what I was originally going to go for.
You originally going to go for music?
I was, yeah. I was going
like what kind of music? Like education, or
I wanted to do jazz guitar performance.
Really?
Yeah.
Fun fact, I also wanted to go to school for music education, and I left the School of Music Education because of how horrific the professor was, and I went to communications instead, and look where I'm at now. I'm in a basement recording with you.
Hell yeah. It's the best place to be, man. Yeah. I mean, yeah, after I talked to a lot of people in the music school at Akron, and I pretty quickly decided that I didn't want to do it before I actually ended up going to college.
So you went to the University of Akron. Did you plan on going there because of music, or was it like, how did you pick that school?
So honestly, I kind of decided to go there because it's where my friends from high school were going. It was so there's a mixture of things. That was a big part of it.
Because Akron's well known for engineering. I mean, they're a huge engineering school.
Yeah. And I didn't necessarily want to do engineering at first, but then I realized that as much as I loved music, engineering was like what I actually did as my hobby, like the other 50% of the time when I wasn't doing music. So when I decided that I didn't want to go to music school, I decided to go for engineering school, and then Akron was actually the obvious choice at that point. Not the obvious choice for the music aspect, to be honest. So it was kind of...
No, it's really not.
Yeah, so it was funny. It was like I actually kind of ended up switching into a better environment for what I was into.
So did you apply at Akron for the music school, or did you already know before you even went there that you were going for engineering?
I applied for music, and then I applied for engineering before I got accepted for music.
We know a lot of people, I know at least, who are in the music program are also extremely good in like the sciences and STEM programs and things like that. I am not one of them. I was horrible with that kind of stuff, which is why I was, when I forcefully left the music program at the University of Akron, I actually was going to go for history, but then I changed and I went to broadcasting school and ended up on 88.1, as you know, where I met Will, and then the whole saga continued of our of our band, which, by the way, we just hit our 10-year anniversary. I didn't know if you know that. So
We
happy old
did.
10-year anniversary of our band.
Wow, congratulations, us. We need to get back together.
When you're so now you're in engineering school. This is where you're at. What
Yeah.
is the game plan from there on out? Do you have your own idea of a new business or your own business, or is it what is the idea at that point?
So I've always wanted to be able to be creative in whatever I do. And I found engineering to be actually wildly creative. Because when you're getting to make things, when you're designing something from the ground up, it's kind of everything is your decision, and it's kind of like, to me, writing a program is as creative as writing a song, and that was actually one of the things that drew me heavily toward engineering. And I think that drive for creativity kind of actually made me more entrepreneurial. I honestly think that's I didn't necessarily know that I wanted to start a business until probably like the third year or fourth year of college. But
So you just wanted to engineer at that point?
Yeah.
Some sort of engineering.
I just wanted to create and design. That was really what I wanted
Now,
to
what?
do.
I got to backtrack a little bit because I want to know something. Because I didn't even know this about you, that you originally went to Akron for or wanted to go for music. What did your parents and your family think of it?
So
Because I know, like, even when someone says, my kid wants to go to music school, I can only imagine what, I know what my parents said, but I don't know how yours reacted to that.
yeah, so my mom is an artist, so she was actually pretty okay with it. But my dad
Pretty okay.
with it. My dad actually went to Akron for music, and he was the one that drove me away from it. So he
was he really?
yeah, he went to Akron for music, and then he went back to school like on GI Bill and stuff for engineering and accounting and a bunch of all the other things that he actually does now. Even though, as
So
you
kind
know,
of
he
the
still
same
writes
path you
music
went
all the
down.
time. But
Yeah.
But
he wrote us a song, I think, if I remember correctly.
he did. He wrote us, I think, 3 songs actually. But yeah, he's a really good songwriter and really good musician. And I learned from him basically that going to school for music was not the best way to get into actually playing music, and that I wanted to play music.
It's true.
And that kind of he didn't have a problem if I had decided to go for that, but he was kind of like the most direct primary resource that I could find that told me that I probably shouldn't and should actually follow my other passion, which was creating things, engineering.
And to be honest, that was probably a good plan because you and I, obviously, we played music together for a few years, and man, there were some dark times in that where I remember, broke. We were both broke. We had no idea what we were doing.
Yeah.
People would fight us at clubs and everything. So I'm kind of glad that I think we're still banned from the Outpost because of you,
Yeah.
if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, sometimes you have to fight the promoter to get your money, but that's it's just the way it goes sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now you're halfway through engineering school, and you said that's about when you came up with the idea for the business. Is that when it kind of sparked?
So I didn't necessarily come up with the idea for this business. I'd come up with the idea that I wanted to design things for people. So as you can see, like I didn't necessarily know that I wanted to design things that light up and entertain people, this like on a live stage kind of thing. But I've always been obsessed with music, and I've always been obsessed with video games actually, and like arcade games. And so I wanted to find some way to break into that realm. And I'd say that by about the third year of engineering, I'd started kind of learning how to create things, and I became, I think, pretty good at it. It was like my driving force through a lot of school. Like even like in our senior design project I did with Brian and Will from our band. We made a brain controlled guitar pedal. So it's kind of like that was like just kind of one of the many weird things that we had come up with that was just kind of mixing together creativity and engineering.
See, I'm not an engineer. I don't have that kind of mind. But I remember sitting around you guys, at our band practice, and I love hearing the engineer's brain, because you guys would just come up with the most insane crap out of nowhere, like that. Oh, I want to make a brain, a brain controlled pedal, or whatever, and everyone else in the room would be like, "What the f is that? And what are you talking?" And then you would do it. It's just like the most ridiculous things, and then you'd be like, "Oh yeah, I can do that." Like I to this day, it just absolutely astounds me how engineers specifically can just pull things out of their ass like that and just be like, "Oh, it's no problem at all."
Oh man.
And it kind of reminds me of this time I was at Carnegie Mellon for some reason, at their art school, because believe it or not, I have a minor in art, so I really lucked out here. Really, picked winners.
Hell yeah.
But I remember there was this group of people this group of engineers who they were creating this video game where you could control this person walking around a room just by brain signals. You would just literally think, like, I want to lift up my left arm, and this thing would lift up its left arm. And they were talking about it like it was nothing. Like, oh yeah, we did this, a couple ones. Like, are you serious? Like, this is the most insane thing I've ever seen. And they just didn't care about it.
Totally.
The engineers were that's just how they are, and it's amazing to me. And also, I felt like an idiot most of the time hanging around you guys, but I mean, that's neither here nor there.
Well, we always felt like idiots coming up with insane ideas, and it's the big idiot circle. I feel like we're all weirdos, and it works out.
So, did you ever talk to your professors about any of this, or is that pretty much just a relationship of this is how you learn engineering? Or did the people at Akron actually push you to do anything, or was it kind of on your own?
Yeah, so I had specifically, I'd say, two professors. One that wasn't really my professor. She was actually an advisor for an extracurricular team that I was a part of, and then another professor who was my advisor in computer engineering. And and both of them really did. They always liked that I would show up to classes and other events that they had with strange hardware that I had built, and they always found that funny and interesting. So they would talk to me about it. And they both pushed me to actually go to grad school, which I did apply for. I got into a program at Columbia, but I just never followed through with it because I just wanted to build stuff. So yeah, the reason I never followed through really was I had an internship at a company in Akron, Ohio, called Nanotronics Imaging, that made microscopes, and I kind of found myself as like the fourth engineer or so at that company, and was able to kind of like build a cool foundation in the startup world with that. And they had moved their headquarters to New York City while I was interning for them, and I found it as just kind of a neat opportunity to go and try a new city, and still have a job that I loved when I moved there. And
so this is when you moved to New York City.
Right.
Because I knew you moved to New York City, but I didn't remember how you got there. So you actually went there because of the job.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I made
which then drops you in. Obviously New York City, it's a hub for pretty much everything business. So
right.
I can only imagine where things sparked from there.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, New York. Honestly, moving to New York was one of the scariest decisions I ever made, and it made me completely broke for a long time. But it also was probably one of the best decisions because I was able to network with everyone who could help me get to the place where I could actually build a business.
So what was that initial move there like? Like trying to find an apartment or things like that? Or
yeah.
And the funny thing is, because you were how old when you moved to New York City?
22.
Could you do that now, you think?
I don't know. I don't think so. It was.
So what was it like?
Yeah. So moving to New York City, it's the most insane thing that anyone ever does. So I found a friend over in Worcester, Ohio, Brittany, and she and I moved out to New York City together, and we both didn't really have money yet, and like she had a job that she knew she was going to
because you're just out of college at this point. You don't really have. I mean, you have the internship, but I mean, we were all broke in college, so we didn't have that much getting out.
Exactly. So you're really like, you're not really anywhere yet out of college. You have to build that up later. And so, but we decided to go and move to one of the most expensive cities in the world as soon as we got out of college. And so
it sounds really like a really terrible idea when you put it like that.
yeah, and it kind of was, but it kind of wasn't at the same time. It was really strange. It was, in retrospect, I feel like it was fun, but at when it was happening, I felt like it was pretty terrible. So we spent the first 3 months in New York actually bumming around Airbnbs, and while saving money so that we could actually get an apartment. Because what they don't tell you when you move to New York is that well, first, I mean, you kind of know that everything's going to be expensive, but whenever you rent an apartment, you also have to pay this crazy fee for the person that found you the apartment, the broker's fee, and you have to pay 3 months of rent up front. And
that's anywhere? That's a standard thing in New York City?
Totally standard. And you have to prove that your income is 40 times the rent.
40?
I'm not even kidding. It's ridiculous.
So that, I mean, New York City's rent is already insane. How are you going to get it proved that it's 40 times?
Yeah, and that was the incredibly hard part.
Hold on. So what is a typical? I got to do some math here. What is a typical rent?
So
say standard.
A crappy apartment is $2,000 a month.
Okay, so $2,000 a month. That means you would have to. That's $80,000.
Which I did not make when I moved to New York. we had to pull strings, honestly. That was the only way.
I mean, call it what it is. You were essentially homeless when you moved there. I mean, Airbnb to Airbnb. That you're essentially homeless at that point.
Yeah, absolutely, for several months, and then ultimately we found this little apartment deep in Chinatown.
I gotta go back though. Hold on 1 second. How long were your Airbnb stays? Would you go from a week, or is it a month in one?
Anywhere from, we spent a month in one, but usually 3 days, 4 days. So
you would have to you'd have days, and then you have to find somewhere else to go.
Yep. Yeah. So we were.
Did you ever have any point where you didn't find anywhere to go and parking lot it or overnight?
Yeah, yeah. I slept at my job a few times. And.
I've done that.
Yeah. And I've actually done that. I've done that not even all that long ago, to be honest. But
I don't think you've had a good career until you've had to sleep at your job.
Yeah.
We've all done it, right?
Exactly. You kind of have to. And I got really lucky that the one of the times when we just had nowhere to stay, the CEO of the company I was working for actually let Brittany and I stay in his apartment for 3 weeks while he was out traveling for business. So
wow,
we got to live in luxury actually for a little bit of that.
Yeah, because you essentially had to tell him hey, I'm on the streets unless you help me out. So, and I work for you, so could you
Pretty much.
Man, that's dedication to a job. My God,
it was pretty nuts, man.
Seriously,
it was pretty nuts. And
so, how did you eventually land the? Did you enjoy it though? Did you weirdly enjoy it, or was it just kind of stressful the entire time?
Yeah.
Because how do you focus on your work when you're man, where the hell am I going to go tonight?
Yeah, it was weird because after a week or two of that, you just stop caring about where you're going to go that night. You just kind of realize that you're going to end up sleeping somewhere. You're going to fall asleep that night. You're going to wake up in the morning. And I knew that there's places to shower. There's gyms and stuff. You can kind of figure it out. And it was strange because I feel moving from Ohio where, in Ohio, we definitely have pretty cheap rents, and it's pretty easy to find a place to sleep, that kind of thing. But then when you go to New York and it's not so easy, you kind of just end up adapting to it and realizing that anywhere you sleep is pretty much as good as anywhere else you're going to sleep, so you might as well just deal with it. And that became my mentality after a week or two.
Did you ever regret going out there for this, or did you know that? And how long did you plan to stay? Did you know it was going to be years that you'd be out there, or no?
Yeah, I was hoping to spend at least 6 years out there, or maybe even just forever. But eventually, I grew to really dislike it. But we'll get to that. But yeah, I didn't. I kind of thought it was maybe a permanent career move at that point, to be honest. One
of the things I hear a lot of older people say is that millennials have no drive for their job or things like that. But my God, there's no way that can be true, because I know what I've had to do for my career in life. And and it's not even half of what you've had to do. I've had to deal with, borderline muggings, in the middle of the night because I had to stay at my job, overnight, and just broke the entire time.
Yeah.
But I mean, I that's one thing that always bothers me is when anybody says that millennials don't have drive.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
Or, they have it easy. It's like we probably have one of the hardest times getting it, which is why I sparked this, because someone had actually said something like that to me. And I was like, I know a bunch of people who are our age, who are millennials, and we get beat up for everything Gen Z does, and and all that. But I mean, there's so many stories like you included that it's just, I mean, we work your butts off to get where you're at, and it kind of is passed over, and people don't really realize how hard it can be.
Yeah, I feel like,
and what it's become. Because I don't know how many times I've heard people tell me, it's like, why don't you just go and get a job? Why you just don't go and call them? And that's a whole different thing that we can talk about later.
Totally.
And I think that was one of the things that drove me most nuts is when he says, why don't you just call them? Like, that's what you can do now. You just call people up and say, hey, I applied for your job. Can I have the job? Like, that's what that's what you do nowadays.
Right.
And
it never works that way. It's like, yeah. No, I mean, I feel like people like our age, people we went to school with, are the most driven people I've ever met. It's not like the folks who are like older than us that are complaining about millennials the whole time. I feel like the younger people that I've met are the ones that are willing to actually go all out and figure out how to make it.
I mean, we've had to do things that like you wouldn't even imagine 20 years ago to get jobs. I mean, I don't know how many times. Oh, one of the worst ones. I will never forget this, my man. Mm-hmm. Never forget this.
Yeah.
I was just out of broadcasting school, and before I went to grad school. I actually went. Funny thing, I went to grad school and got my master's. I kid you not. I went to grad school because I couldn't afford my student loans, so I went there so I could defer them. I kid you not. That's why I went to grad school.
Wow.
And I ended up loving grad school.
Yeah.
So it turned out okay, but that's. I mean, my family told me, it's like, hey, if you go to grad school, you can defer your student loans. It's like, good, I can't afford them. And so that's,
it's amazing.
I lost my train of thought. Where was I going? But it's just, so I ended up, the interview.
Yeah.
God. So I was before grad school, and I was trying to find a job, and I don't think people realize, older people realize how sketchy some of these things can be.
Oh yeah. And
how terrifying they can be. And I applied for this job that was like, it was a communications manager at some company. And it looked real cool online and everything. So I was like, cool. So I applied online, and I got a call like an hour later, which looking back, it should have been my first like red flag. Like that something was like not right, you know? And so, which is funny because, it's, you get a call back, but there's something weird about that. But so I show up to this place, and I think it was, oh God, I forget. I think it was like North Ridgeville or something, Ohio. Mm-hmm. And it's in this strip mall. This address he gave me, this strip mall. And this guy called me. This is, whatever. And I walk in, and this place is like, it's like kind of like an office building, but it's not done. Like it's like clearly under renovations. It's all under renovations. Like the carpet's torn up, drywall's off in some areas. There's lights hanging, from wires and stuff. And the only room that was done and finished was this guy's office. It was like a glass office. And so I walk in there, I'm like, man, this is weird. But I needed the job, so it was whatever.
Yeah, totally.
And so he calls me back to his office. And I'll never forget it. So I sit down in this chair, and this guy was one of these guys with these slick back hair, the tight suits and everything. Mm-hmm. And so I sit down in the chair, and he shuts the door and locks it behind me.
Oh my God, that's horrifying, dude.
It was serious. I kid you not. I'll never forget I felt my stomach drop because it was just, shutting the doors, whatever. For one thing, privacy. There's nobody else in here. Didn't even matter.
Yeah.
But he shut it, and then like with a key, like a physical key, went and like locked it. I was like, oh my God. And so it turned out it was like this horrifically shady job. Like it was a pyramid scheme basically. And so I knew I didn't, from the moment he locked the door, I was like, I just got to get out of here. Like, I don't care what I say. I don't want this job, man. It's not worth it. And so I said anything I could do to get out of it. And eventually, it was it is. And he let me go, obviously, and nothing happened. But man, like, this kind of crap was unheard of back in the day. But that's just normal now. This is what it is.
Totally. You're scrounging and you just end up in the weirdest situations.
I've had interviews like that. I had one time where I interviewed at a car dealership for a position for doing like their work on their websites or whatever. Yeah. and the lady who was interviewing me legitimately could not read my resume. I had to read her my resume.
Wow. Did she understand what you were saying?
Yeah, it's just she just couldn't read.
Wow, that's incredible.
It was just, and it is what it is. I don't want to make fun of difficulties or anything, but it was just, it threw me off guard when she told me that. I'm like, it was
Totally.
it was wild.
Totally.
But
man,
okay.
nuts.
Okay, so enough of me. Back to you. So now you're in New York City with this internship. What happens then?
Yeah. So at that point, that was when I moved to New York City. Was when I officially went full time. So it was right after graduation. And so we bounced around Airbnbs, sleeping at the office, sleeping in the car, all that kind of good stuff for the first couple months, just kind of figuring it out. And then eventually we found this little apartment in Chinatown. I'm not even kidding. It was like 190 or like 180 square feet, with somehow 2 bedrooms and a living room.
That's like a kitchen.
I know. Just think about that. My bedroom was 6 feet by 8 feet. Brittany's bedroom was 6 feet by 6 feet. Our living room
did it have a door in between you guys, or was it just like, this is your corner, this is my corner?
Yeah, we actually had walls and doors. It's like unbelievable how small.
How?
I know, right? They basically didn't exist. It was just like these really thin little walls with this like weird little like they call this, anyone from New York would know, it's called a winged 2-bedroom. It's the worst, most insane apartment design anyone could ever hear of. But
no, I'm assuming you couldn't even fit a bed in that, right?
I had a futon, and it fit almost perfectly. And the worst thing about that, though, is you actually couldn't move it without taking it apart and putting it back together. But, in a weird way, it kind of, after you're living in a tiny space, you kind of like end up getting used to it and sort of enjoying it. But at the same time, I mean, the bad side of that apartment, though, was it was completely full of cockroaches, and
was it really?
And it cost like all of the money we were making at the time. But
now I'm assuming like you guys, you probably didn't have anything with you. You probably had like a bag of clothes, right? Like that was basically it.
Yeah, pretty much. And that was like I had a cot, like a camping cot, and we set that up like in the living room that didn't really exist. And so like sometimes like one of us would sleep on like the cot, and I slept on like a towel on the ground for a little while. But eventually I did get a futon, and that futon was actually pretty awesome. And
like a literal towel just draped on the floor.
Yeah, and the weird thing is, it's not the first time I had done that. I did that in Ohio too for some reason. Sometimes
I slept on a deflated air mattress in college. I'll never forget that. It was covered in duct tape and everything.
It's great. I feel like you have to have horrible sleeping situations. It's the best way to learn some drive, right?
It's one of them. Yeah,
it kind of works out.
But so you spent you said you spent basically all your money just on the rent alone. So what did you do for food or travel or anything, or is that basically just did not existent?
Yeah, it was. This is a weird thing. You can actually eat cheap in New York. No tourist will ever tell you that. But if you live in Chinatown, you can actually find a lot of like really cheap food that is so much better than you'd ever expect it to be. So we actually, honestly, like, even if you only have a couple bucks, like a day or like for food or something, you can actually totally get by. It's really strange, because when we were like kind of jumping around different Airbnbs and stuff, we were in places where it was like harder to afford that kind of stuff. But then living in Chinatown, kind of everything came together. And in a weird way, I feel like that's where my New York experience actually started and kind of turned around and became good. Even though I was living in a 6 by 8 foot room in like a part of town that no one really ever went to. Like, we were very deep into Chinatown, but it started to work out around then.
So what happens then? Like, are you considering leaving the internship at this point? Or?
Yeah. So at that point, I kind of I'd really had started to get the hang of working this job in New York, and my roommate was starting to get like into the thing of what she was doing, and because I'd been there for a while, I just kind of I basically was just kind of like grinding like at at work for the first while there. But I also was kind of starting to build like my group of friends, and I got really lucky that the company that I worked for was actually inside of an art building called Pioneer Works, and
Okay.
I got to meet a lot of artists and other kinds of creative types that eventually led to where my entrepreneurial journey started. So yeah, I worked for a long time in that environment, and managed to actually work my way up to the position as the lead engineer of the company after basically grinding for 2 years. And it's kind of like you're just pushing really hard like every day for like 2 years, and then eventually, because I was such an early employee and managed to, I think, do some pretty pivotal stuff, I managed to actually end up being the lead engineer. And that was where things got easy, but I have a weird tendency to not like when things are easy. So
I have a feeling like a lot of creative people are that way.
yeah, it's kind of, you don't necessarily just want to glide. And
that's what I was like in radio. Like whenever there's a common thing in radio where it's like if you're starting to get comfortable in your job, you're starting to do something wrong.
yeah,
And that's kind of, I feel like, what you're doing.
exactly. Yeah, it was like I'd done this grind. It was hard, and was like spending every dollar I had, and also at that point too, Maggie, my future wife, had moved out, and she was actually living in Pennsylvania at the time, and I had begun commuting from Pennsylvania to New York City every day, which
My God, how long
about
is
an hour and
that?
45 minutes each way.
Oh, it's not as long as I thought.
Yeah, it was, I'd spend usually like somewhere between 3.5 and 4 hours in the car every day. It was a lot of time, but that was like the glide period where before deciding to start a business and while just like having this job, and kind of at that point, I knew that like there had to be something that was next. Like I wouldn't just do this forever. So I was using that as like a means to get to a point where I could start a business. And somehow though, during that glide period, the thing that actually thrust me into it was one of those guys that I'd worked with at Pioneer Works, Dave Scheinkopf, got a request to make a light up costume for Taylor Swift. And Dave knew that I was into like wireless technology and all kinds of electronics, all kinds of like weird esoteric electronics. So he gave me a call and asked if I wanted to work on that project. And that was
So you go from just interning to all of a sudden like, hey, Taylor Swift needs this thing done. Can you do it?
right. And I was full time, but yeah, it was like it was basically like I just kind of got this call like out of the blue that suddenly Taylor Swift might need something that I could help with. And I thought, what a weird, cool opportunity. I'm just going to go for it.
Did you ever think of turning it down because of how odd it was? Or you're like, no, this is full bore what I want to do?
That's the weird part. I never thought about turning it down. Even though I knew I was like, there's no chance that this is going to be like lucrative. It wasn't like there was nothing lucrative for years at my own business. And I knew that there was like no chance that like I didn't know if there would ever be any other kind of thing that would follow it. I didn't know like how to build that exact kind of thing. I just thought I could figure it out. And yeah.
See, that's what I love about the engineer drive is like, I don't know how to do this, but I'm sure I'll figure it out.
Right.
Like it can be the most stressful thing in the world. And that's why my anxiety alone would prevent me from being an engineer. Because someone presents you a problem, you're like, I have no idea how that can happen. I'm pretty sure it's not even possible, but I'm sure I'll figure it out.
Exactly. And you know what? That's the fun part of it. It's like playing a puzzle game. You have all these tools that you're aware of, and someone has some crazy request, and you're just applying everything you've ever learned to figure out how to make this thing happen. And that's kind of what where that came into play. So it was like Dave at Pioneer Works had given me a call, and then James DeVito, who's the other early founder of Smooth Technology with me, he gave James a call, and we kind of all assembled for the first time to do this weird out of the blue Taylor Swift LED dress project. And we were also all working our day jobs at the same time. So I was still working at Nanotronics. Dave was working at Pioneer Works. James was working at a company called Adafruit. Any electronics hobbyists will know that company. And we at night we were just working on this dress. and I've never been more exhausted.
So you're basically working 24 hours a day at this point.
It was crazy.
I think you told me one time about how you finished work. Correct me if I'm wrong on the story, but you were in Harlem or something, and you finished at like 3-4 a.m. and had to like walk to the train station, and said it was just like the weirdest thing you've ever seen.
Oh yeah, I mean it was there were a lot of there's a lot of drug there were like a lot of like drug addiction issues that you could just see up there, and so it was like we were basically like wading through a bunch of like basically heroin addicts that were on the street at like 4 a.m. who were all just standing there and just kind of stare at you the whole time. It's a really bizarre thing. And but yeah, that was like a night on a nightly basis for quite a while actually.
So how much sleep are you getting? Basically 2 hours a night, because you'd work your day job and then this at night.
Yeah, I'd say at most 2 hours. It was not healthy. It was like that for like a month and a half.
Are you serious?
Yeah, it was bad. And yeah, and so that kind of, I've always been good at not sleeping, but that was like to a pretty extreme level.
Was there any point at this point where you're like taking, the subway home at 4 a.m. thinking like, what the hell am I doing? Why am I here?
100%. It was like,
did you ever almost like pull the ripcord at that point and say, you know what, screw this, I'm done?
Honestly, if I felt like that was a choice, I probably would have, but I just didn't feel like it was a choice. I was like, we're like committed to this thing. It's for the 1989 World Tour, like maybe her biggest album ever, and like it was just like blowing up, and I knew that this was like such like a fundamental component to one of the songs that it was kind of like they're just failure was not an option in this situation. So it was just like push through, drink Red Bull. At that point we were talking about getting sponsored by Red Bull because of how much we were drinking, and it was like it was just literally like every single day and every single night just working, and on the weekends too, doing like double time, like the same amount of work pretty much, and maybe trying to get another hour of sleep or two. And yeah,
so this was kind of like the turning point of when you kind of started shifting towards your business, I would assume. Like this was kind of when it started.
Yeah, exactly, because I was like meeting James and Dave. I was like, oh, these are two other people who will also do this with me. Like I've met other people that will actually work this absolutely insane thing that we're doing to try to make this crazy project into a reality. And I was like, this is a good thing. Even though everything sucks right now, this is a good thing.
But now it had to be in the back of your head. Like you even say, I wanted to start my own company. I mean, you're an engineer. You're not an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So it's like, in my head, even if I wanted to do that, I'd be like, how the hell do I start a company? Like, I would not know anything.
Totally.
So how do you go from like, I have this idea, this is what I want to do, I have these guys who are just insane as I am.
Yeah.
Like, how do you go from that to start? Like, I wouldn't even know the first thing to do.
Totally. And we didn't. I don't know if we still do, to be honest. It's like, we came up with a name. Well, James had this name already, actually, Smooth Technology. And then we were like, cool, like that's what we'll call ourselves. And then we go from that to trying to figure out like, oh wait, how do you like make this into an entity that the government recognizes? And that's insane.
That isn't illegal somehow.
Yeah, like how do you do this? And yeah, it's like we ended up like talking to like lawyers, and that was before I knew how much lawyers cost. And then, dude, lawyers are so expensive. And so we were,
that's the job, man. That's got to be the job.
I know, man. Will White, that's what he's doing. But yeah, it's but it was like talking to lawyers when like you're like trying to like figure out how to, you're like spending money like to like find like lawyers and like start a business, like start like the legal side of the business and stuff, while not having any idea what any of it means, and like living out. I
can
only
savings. Imagine like you going to a lawyer's office and say, all right, I have this crazy idea. I want to do this. I want to do this. I want to, work with this person. And they're probably like, how do I make this a business? And they're probably looking at you like, what the heck are you talking about? Like,
Totally.
Because them, like, you're confused about how to start a business, but on their end, they're like, they know how to start a business, but like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, they're like,
what do you mean?
they're like, oh, like the clients you're gonna aim for are gonna be like these like 5 specific pop stars, or like, you know, it's like you wanna. It's such a
'cause, like,
weird.
can you
thing.
imagine walking to? It's like I have one client. It's Taylor Swift. I'd be like, get out of my face. What are you talking about? Your one client is Taylor
Right.
Swift. Like, what do you mean? Like, who the hell starts their job, their business, and their first client is Taylor
Yeah.
Swift? Like, who?
Totally, dude. I don't know. It was the weirdest, luckiest moment ever that job just fell in our laps. To be totally honest, and yeah.
So what happens then? Like, so you eventually finish the dress. I'm assuming.
Yeah,
right?
so we finish it working with designer Ashley Levine.
Can you at all see this anywhere?
Can you see the dress? Yeah. It's for How You Get the Girl in the 1989 Taylor Swift World Tour. You can find it all over the place. It's even in the calendar. If you in fact it's September. The official Taylor Swift calendar September from like 2018 or something was that dress. In fact,
insane.
the dress is
All right, I'm sorry to
the
interrupt.
dress
Go
is in
ahead.
the Country Music Hall of Fame as well. That's kind of another.
Are
Yeah,
you serious?
it's at the Taylor Swift Learning Center. I think is what it's called.
Man, do I feel small. My God, I haven't done anything with my life.
Dude, I never expected this to actually like go anywhere. It was a weird thing, but it was really fun. but
All right, so what happens
yeah, so
now?
we finish the dress and then you go to rehearsals because you have to put the dress on Taylor and you have to see if she likes it, and you have to
How nerve-wracking was that? Where it's like you spent literally like basically killed yourself making this, almost literally killed yourself
Yeah.
making this. How worried were you that you're gonna go and she goes, "This thing sucks."
Dude, totally worried. It's a thing like because you have no idea what her reaction is going to be, and you know she's the boss. Like she is the boss, and there's a bunch of other people who are still your boss in that situation. So it's like you have to impress the lighting designer, you have to impress the production of the producer of the show. You have to impress all these people, and also Taylor Swift. And that was the goal, was like get all these people to say that it's good, and basically make it exactly what they want, and you know put our flavor into it so that we can have this really cool piece of art on stage. And that time, you know, that specific moment when you're actually at rehearsals was the time that was literally the most exhaustive I've ever been in my life, because I didn't sleep. I took off my real job at that time. I took that off for a couple days, and we literally didn't sleep for like 6 days straight. Maybe it was straight through.
So
work.
the first time you ever met Taylor Swift, I mean, anybody who's a fan, or even if you're not a fan, I mean, it's Taylor Swift, so you kind of be starstruck and nervous. But I assume you go was like, I don't care, like, just do you like this or not? Like, I'm so tired, like, I don't care. Do you want it? Do you want it or
dude.
not? Is that kind of how it went?
And you know, so the fashion designer we worked with was really the one that like presented it, but I'm like standing there like Vanna White presenting it, like I'm also standing there just kind of like showing it off, and
I'm in the dress.
now. I wish no, but yeah, and you know it's really weird. I thought I'd be like utterly like starstruck and like it'd be hard to talk and stuff, but I've learned about myself that doesn't actually happen to me for some reason. I kind of
you gotta kind of
Yeah.
put that out of your head, because like I've been in radio for years, so I've talked to a couple well-known
Yeah.
people, and you just kind of like, it depends on the other person, really. If they make you feel like they're just another person, then that's what it is.
totally.
You know?
You're
I'll never. One of the best conversations I had with a celebrity was MGK, and everyone was freaking out because it's MGK.
Yeah.
I was talking to about the chalet in Strongsville.
Totally.
Like that's, it is what it
Dude,
is.
it's amazing. Exactly. It's like they're all just humans, and they'll just want to talk about normal stuff. In fact, if you just talk about normal stuff with them, I feel like they're more appreciative of that than you like fawning over them.
I did mess up one time because I met Sarah Bareilles, and I didn't know it was Sarah Bareilles. I was like, "Who are you?" She goes, "Sarah Bareilles." I was like, "Oh."
Oh my god, that's hilarious.
like I literally didn't know who she was.
Who are you?
'Cause I knew the name and I knew her voice, but I hadn't seen her
Yeah.
face. And so like, this is Sarah Bareilles. I'm like, oh.
Yeah, that's too funny. No, man, it's true though.
So
But yeah.
So where's it go from there? Now you're done with Taylor Swift dress.
Yeah,
Now what?
so we finished that up, and I go well, first off, we finished that up. I get on a train back to New York City. So these rehearsals for almost all these big pop acts are in this little tiny middle of nowhere town called Lidditz, Pennsylvania, where there's a company there called Tate Towers, and they make like every stage you've ever seen in a live show. They're crazy, and they have this like giant shell building that you can like house an arena stage in and practice in, and it's in basically Amish country, Pennsylvania, and yeah, it's nuts, and basically I board a train there to go back to New York City, and I was going to work that morning. I left them around 4 a.m. and I was planning to get to New York City to go to work around 7 a.m. And I had like, that was like the moment where I reached like the level of exhaustion where I actually couldn't keep like my eyes open, like at all.
Like it was that point.
You couldn't
like
attempt to.
Your body was literally breaking
Yeah, it was
down.
just over. It was like, but it was like, there was this feeling of relief that came with it where it was like, oh, all right, we're actually done. Like this thing's going to happen. What the hell? This is real. And then my body was just like, it's over. It just shut down.
You're probably running on all adrenaline at that point, and then when that wore off, your body was gone. There was nothing else to run on. It was gone.
Totally.
Empty.
And man, I rode that commuter train all the way to Penn Station in New York, and I did not wake up from the middle of Pennsylvania to the middle of Penn Station, New York. On that whole journey, it was insane.
How long of a journey is that?
It was about 3.5 hours or so. But like, you know, people are sitting on the train. Like you go through Philly, and people get on the train who are like commuting to like Princeton, and then people get on the train at Princeton going to New York and all this other stuff. And so you're like sitting next to people. People are like putting luggage over your head, and never ever responded to it. I was like, must have looked like a corpse to those people. But yeah.
So is now the point when you've decided to start the company, or is it still kind of in the background?
So it was getting there. At this point, I kind of, I went back to like grinding at work and was like, okay, I now know that there's a thing that I can work on that's pretty special, and I really enjoy, even though it's like almost killed me. And I decided at that point that, I was basically at that point working to make enough money to like save up enough that I could actually like quit my job and be able to focus on this thing full time. And so I think I worked for about 6 more months, and then I quit, and then pretty much nothing came in, had no projects for like a year.
So you're basically unemployed for a year?
Much.
In New York City. What did you do for money?
I did like little contract odd jobs here and there. I worked with I would try to find random companies to work with, because I was working with mostly James at that point. James and Dave hadn't quit their full-time jobs yet, so I was the first one to quit, and I was just doing odd jobs everywhere I could to make up for that income that I did not have. And in a weird way, that was actually a really fun period of time, because I got to work on the design of like all these different strange like industrial machines, and also like websites and like databases, and it was like a really weird time where I actually learned a lot. I learned how to do everything, because I just like, the only way to survive was to be able to do everything, so I just had to learn everything. And so it was like,
I mean, you had no other choice. So it's like, did you ever take a project where they're like, can you do this? So you're like, yeah, sure. But you had like no idea how to do
every
it.
single project. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. All right. Maybe not every single project, but a lot of them were that way for sure. Because, my background was like, okay, I had made an LED dress with like wireless technology and programmed that system. And the other thing I had done was build microscopes. So it was a pretty weird skill set, anything else that you're doing outside of that you kind of had to make up.
So did you quit your job thinking there was work ahead, or did you just kind of jump off and pray, and then it just didn't work out?
Yeah, it was really jump off. And then it was definitely like a little bit of a leap of faith. I kind of felt like I'd had my I'd like done my time at that company, and I just kind of wanted to explore. So I figured, I had this idea in my head where I was like, I'd saved up enough that I could live for a few months and not need a job for a few months, but I needed
Okay.
but like, and so if I absolutely utterly failed during those few months, I would just go figure out a way to get another job, which is way harder than it actually, like, I was making it easy in my head, and I'm thankful that I didn't need to do that, because I probably would have had a really hard time finding a job if I told them, like, oh yeah, I like quit my good job where I had like I was like managing people and had a pretty good position and stuff, and I just quit it kind of randomly to go and try to do something else. Like, I feel like that wouldn't look very good to a lot of companies.
What does your family think at this point? It's like, I quit my job. Don't worry, I'm going to be working at Taylor Swift. Like, I mean,
didn't tell him.
That's basically what happened.
I didn't
You
tell
what?
him. I didn't tell him until the day I quit. So
You just called him up and be like, hey, by the way.
yeah, pretty much. It's like, by the way, I decided to take a leap of faith and stop everything I was doing that was actually working out.
What was their response to that?
Their response was, my dad's response was like, I understand that you want to do kind of like creative engineering work for a living, but he said just remember that it's still a job, and like you still do actually need to like keep hours. And he's kind of like reminding me that even though I was making myself unemployed, I shouldn't act unemployed. That's kind of like his response to it. And my mom, I think, thought I was a little bit crazy, but she respected the decision. They were both cool with it, but I think they also realized kind of the gravity of it, that I was like potentially making myself pretty unemployable at that moment.
So how do you eventually start getting contracts in again? Like, when's the next big one?
So I got lucky that there was a project actually at my old company.
This isn't the first time you got lucky.
Yeah, I know. I got lucky a lot. I mean, let's be honest. I feel like entrepreneurship is like 85% luck. Well, maybe not quite that high. It's like 50% luck, probably. It's a mixture of absolutely working your ass off and then being really lucky at the same time. That's honestly what it is. Because
that's the secret.
Yeah, like
formula.
even to this day, like I wake up at like usually between 9 and 10, and then I will work like a full day until like 6 or 7, and then after my wife goes to sleep, I'll usually start working again, and I'll work until like 5 a.m. or 4 a.m. And that's just like, that is my daily way of being. So
even on the weekends.
Yeah, I mean I work every weekend. I'm honestly like I'm like pretty obsessed with what I do, so I just don't ever stop, to be honest. If I'm not like actively spending time with like other people, like if we're not hanging out, or like I'm not like going out to eat or something, I am for sure working. I'm very obsessive about this stuff.
What does your wife think of that?
I think it definitely it annoys her sometimes, because she's like, you've been in your office for like 18 hours straight and you haven't slept, and and I'm here. But we get by. It's definitely a real balance, though. Like, work-life balance is not my strong suit. That's something that I'm trying to learn all the time, but I'm not good at it.
So what was the next big project, though? Like, when did the next thing really break?
Yeah, so the next thing that really rolled in was, after struggling for a while on that, we started getting these little projects, actually, kind of little projects that could just kind of like help float this kind of new company that we had made. And at this point,
it's like the dam was
yeah,
leaking.
Exactly. And at this point, James had started to go full time as well, and so we made this like crazy like LED infinity mirror octagon for.
Was it an official company at this point?
We actually did have an LLC formed at that point, so we'd begun to be a company, although we didn't know literally anything about how to run a company. We just had a name. The government knew that we were called Smooth Technology. However, we didn't know what it even meant to have a company. We were figuring that out, and these little jobs started rolling in. We built this LED octagon. It was weird. Like one of the first jobs we had, we got contacted for, but ended up not happening. Like honestly, the reason I quit my job like pretty abruptly was this was like super early. This is actually right before the big time where we didn't have any work. But we got contacted by the White House during like the last year of Obama, to build like a robot that would show Twitter messages, and we were supposed to build it with Adam Savage from MythBusters, and like
unreal. Where this is
when that project came in, I was like, all right, I'm quitting my job, and this is what I'm going to go do for a living. That was actually the thing that convinced me to quit my job, but it turned out that the White House didn't have a budget for it. And they wouldn't even pay for the parts. Like they wouldn't pay for like the parts to build the thing. And so I was like, I literally can't afford to do this project. And it of course completely fell through. And that was when like I was like, okay, well, I have a company, I don't have any work, I quit my job, and now I have to figure out the rest of this stuff. But yeah, after like a year of that, we started to get these little projects where we were building little lighting things for small bands. Oh yeah, what's up, Paul?
I got a question though, because how does the White House find no offense to you, a small tiny ass company like you to do this? I mean, you're essentially non-existent at this point. How do they come across you?
Yeah, so they actually found James in our group. So James makes at that time he had made some tutorials and other kinds of things about LEDs for Adafruit, which makes hobbyist electronics, and they found basically some of James's work, and they emailed his boss at Adafruit, who then sent James that message, and then that was kind of how it ended up happening. Is the White House found James's boss, and then James's boss sent it to us.
So what I've got from this is that you have two people to thank for your career: Taylor Swift and Obama.
Yeah, that's
literally
actually true. I would not have quit my job and actually like gone down the insane journey of attempting to be full-time at my own thing if it weren't for that pivotal moment. Even though it didn't ever happen. Like even though we literally never built anything there, I wouldn't have quit my job if someone didn't ask us to do it.
Yeah. Right. So what was the next big project? Sorry, you're just about to get to that.
Yeah, so after all that little stuff trickled in, the next big project that really came in was we actually had two at the same time. One was a project we did with Google, and the other one was we made an LED video bra for Katy Perry. So two really different projects. One, yeah. So this was like 12 or 14 months into Smooth Tech existing, and we got contacted by the lighting designer of the Taylor Swift tour, who basically just sent us a message saying, I have a project that's just as crazy as this thing did for Taylor Swift. And he's like, I'm working on it. Same producer. It's like, let's get you guys in on this. And we were like, yes, like finally, like something is happening. And we
we're sitting in the back of your head at all like, oh my God, not this again. Like I can't do this
kind
again.
of, because I'm such a perfectionist. And one of the things that I'm always like so afraid of is like, one of these things just not working on stage, because like we're putting this stuff like on people that are like actively wearing it in front of like 20,000 plus people on a tour, and you just want it to work perfectly. And it is scary because what I do, like I still do this like every night of the show. I'll go to like Instagram and I'll be like hashtag Katy Perry, and I'll just be like, did it work tonight? And I try to find like the video of her wearing it like on and you know what? One night, I think it was at like Mohegan Sun in Connecticut, the bra didn't work, and it didn't. Well, one side worked. It was two sides, and one of the sides didn't work, and she played it off perfectly, and that actually like removed a bunch of that fear, because the bra was like a big reveal. She like threw off this coat, and it was before she does hot and cold, and the bra flashes hot cold like on it, like back and forth, and
right,
and like the whole left side of the bra just like didn't say anything on it, but
so it just
said yeah. Well, it said half of the word hot, and but she like played it off. She was just like I mean, it was incredible because it actually took like so much pressure off. I mean, the pressure's still there. You always want everything to work perfectly every time, but it was also like I couldn't be more thankful that she was wearing it at that moment and was able to just like make a joke about how her boobs weren't working that night.
So I'm assuming from there, it just kind of springboarded then into
Yeah.
And then with a bunch of little breaks, because I remember when you got married, you built randomly an arcade machine
Definitely.
for arcade game rather, for your wedding, and then that ended up on the news.
Right.
And so everything just kind of. This is when because we've been friends for years, but this is when I even started to kind of notice that your kind of company was starting to get way bigger than even I realized it was. at the time.
Yeah, and it was, it was strange because like as we started doing more of these things, we started to get press and started to like take interviews and started to, like actually like be able to like Google my name and see something come up, and that was a whole strange environment too. I mean, it's like by no means what like an actual famous person experiences, but at the same time, it's like whoa, there's like a news article with my name on it from Billboard. That's crazy, and that
another big
and it's like and that kind of stuff kind of kept happening with projects, and like now we've found ourselves in Time magazine and Elle and Vogue and In Style, and it's kind of crazy, and.
Well, you recently worked on the VMAs that just happened, right?
We made a LED face mask for Lady Gaga that she wore through her whole performance. During she did a bunch of the songs from her new Chromatica album, and we made an LED face mask that kind of mimics the art style, like the sinusoidal wave art style in Chromatica, and she wore it for the whole performance, and it like we didn't actually know that she was gonna wear it for the whole performance. And it kind of like just blew our minds because she spent like 12 minutes on the VMAs on this like crazy like iconic night where she won like everything, and she was like wearing our mask during her big performance.
But at the same time, nobody knows that's you that did it, right? I mean, it's people seeing it like it's just a mask. Nobody knows.
Yeah, and it's strange. That's one of the other weird parts. It's like when you always like want the credit, you always want people to like know that it's like, yeah, we did that, but you also have to figure out how to be tasteful about it. You don't necessarily want like Lady Gaga to like go up to a microphone and be like, smooth technology made me a mask. But at the same time, when people Google it later, you do want them to know. And that's actually what.
Well, a lot of it's probably the people behind the scenes too. Like the people who put that together know who made that. And that's probably 90%.
Definitely. That's like 90% of our business. But you still want people just to know what you're doing. And
one thing that I think everybody will know you for is, and you're going to know it the minute I say it, is the hat.
The Billy Porter hat. Absolutely. That was amazing.
Now you said that wasn't that like just a side project that you guys kind of did?
Yeah, it was a really quick project. We have there's this amazing hat designer that we work with named Sarah Sokol, and she had this concept for this like light shade hat, and then we came up with like the idea of like how it would open and stuff, and it was just this crazy collaboration that happened over the course of like a couple days, and then we just kind of made this little system where Billy's stylist could basically walk behind him and press a button that would open his hat for him, and press another button that would close it, so Billy could just stand there and like look awesome while the hat did its thing, and and we never expected the amount of media attention that it got. I mean, it went out there. We thought it was funny and hilarious and like just a really cool little project that we worked on with our friend. And then next thing we know, it's getting reshared like 20 million times on Instagram.
Now, what does your company look like now? It started off as the three of you. What is it now? How many people are there now? I mean, what is the shape of it now?
We stayed very small. We had 5 people at the beginning of this year, and one of our studio manager Mia was really awesome, and she actually left to take on her own career in like social media and stuff. She's really great. And then Sachem is the other person in our business. So really, there's 4 core members. It's me, James DeVito, Dave Scheinkoff, and Sachem Arvidsson. And Sachem, we met him on Taylor while working on the Taylor Swift stuff, but he came in full time with us a little bit later. he actually was the touring and the touring lighting person, and kind of like a major like creative person with with like all the lighting and visuals for the Flaming Lips for the last like 11 years.
Right.
And so he's added so much. But basically, like, we keep this small team because we all work really well together. We design really well together. But when it comes to making some of these huge projects with a lot of fabrication, we expand like massively. I think we probably at one point last year had something like 30 people hired on for like a month to build like some of our big projects. So we kind of grow and shrink, but we keep our team to this, just our main designers, like the main group of the core group of us that do a lot of the design and engineering, because we have a very good chemistry with each other.
Now I got a question that you could probably answer pretty quickly, because I assume I knew the answer. Has there ever been a project that you have turned down? Have you ever said, no, that is literally not possible, or anything like that?
I've never said it's not possible, but I have turned down projects. Yeah. Yeah, we've, it's funny because when you're new, like when we were young, we never turned down anything. Everything was a yes, because you want to get something. But I feel like last year we really started to hit our stride, and we actually turned down a lot. Cause we don't really want to change our dynamic. We love being a tiny weird company with just a bunch of strange people that enjoy making bizarre electronics. And so we kind of we could have had more work last year, and we didn't take it. And that's honestly, I think, been for the best. We keep our workload how we like it, and it lets us put special attention and special creativity and kind of our full selves into every project.
So there is one thing, though, that the kind of obvious question now that what's going on this year is, how has COVID affected everything? Like, what has it done to you guys?
COVID is a nightmare. Honestly, it's bad for us. We've been able to, like, one thing that we're really lucky about is that with our tiny team, we are super agile, so we can kind of change what we do pretty rapidly if we need to. And I'll say that like last year at this time, like this far into the year, we had already done tons of projects, like tons and tons of projects. And this year we've probably done like 4 projects realistically. But that said, we did manage to kind of pivot into the medical industry briefly. So like right when everything kind of shut down in March, we were like, oh my God, we work with live entertainment. Like we work with stage shows. We make experiences. Like,
did you ever think it was all over?
It felt like it might be. It definitely felt like it might be. It was pretty dire for a moment there. But then I got a call from an old friend who's actually he's the president of Nanotronics, the company that I worked at and quit about 5 years ago to start Smooth Technology. And he said he was interested in working together on a non-invasive ventilation device. And next thing I know, me and the whole team, we rev up and we say, all right, this is what we're doing. We're going to work on medical devices. And we worked with them, and as of June, we made a device that got FDA approval and is actively in production. We made the device with them, with Nanotronics, and it's in active production to be to actually be used to help COVID, people who have COVID and other kind of respiratory problems. And
unreal, man.
Thanks,
Seriously,
man. It was crazy. It was a really weird. This year has been extremely strange, and it definitely felt at points like man, like I'm gonna just have to figure out how to just survive for for the rest of the year. But then yeah, that rolled in, and then as of about a month ago, I'd say the whole entertainment industry is starting to just accept that coronavirus is here. And so things are starting to happen.
So what's the forecast like for you then? I mean, without these events, what are you going to do now?
We're going to work on things that are in the virtual space. So one example is Lady Gaga's VMAs performance. That was a televised performance, and we're planning to keep working on those kinds of things. And we also have a lot of ideas in the realm of kind of like different types of like toys and laying devices to help connect people while they're away from each other. And one thing that we're also doing, which is actually in the realm of experience, but it predated COVID, and hopefully we'll open sometime in the next couple of months. I mean, we'll see. It's gonna definitely be after a COVID vaccine, I think. But we're doing we're kind of working on this we're directing all of the technology at a new art museum in Texas called Seismic, and that's been a huge project. So it's kind of like for this year, we just skated by and somehow managed to survive by becoming a medical company for a few months. It's very strange.
With FDA approval, which I assume that was probably the hardest part.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Approval. Yeah, it was working with John from Outronics and just kind of figuring out all the ways to engineer around all of the requirements of the FDA so that this thing could actually be used and help people. And that was it's definitely a hard part. They do not give away that approval easily.
Well, that was very noble of you. It's honestly pretty amazing that you guys have been able to do that.
It's been a really good time at the same time. It's even though it's a different kind of work than what we're used to, I love being able to dip our toes into a whole different field. And
right,
it kind of just made sense this year. It was like I felt it was the right way for us to use our skills this year, all things considered.
All right, so let's end on a pretty happy note, the best we can, because I was gonna ask you about your job searching experience and all that, but you never really had that. But what do you think? Like, what is your thoughts on just real quick, just a couple minutes so we can wrap it up. Just your thoughts of today and what's it like, getting a job for people nowadays and things like that. You're kind of self-made, but I mean, what are your thoughts?
I personally got really. I luckily was able to make a business and kind of just follow my internship from college through. I feel like I took a lot of the easy way out earlier on, but finding that internship and also just from a lot of my friends who are looking for jobs right now, it seems really hard, especially during COVID. I mean, at this point in time, just no one is hiring, basically. So
right,
it's a real problem. But at the same time, I kind of have a feeling that once we have a vaccine and can kind of start to actually learn to live with coronavirus as we all get vaccinated or do whatever kinds of social distancing and masking up and all that kind of good stuff that they're all doing already. I think that things are going to kind of round a corner, because I think there's so much creativity and innovation that's happening in the home right now while everyone's unemployed, that I think that there could be some kind of new little renaissance of innovation that's just around the corner. And I think that could create a lot of jobs.
That would be fantastic.
I think it would be fantastic. And honestly, I think it's there. I mean, I feel like COVID created this whole this, like, in the hacker community that I often operate in. Everyone after everyone lost their jobs from coronavirus, they all started to work on medicine and all started to make databases and contact tracers and all this kind of stuff. All this innovation occurred so rapidly. And it's like this kind of disaster seems to breed innovation. And I think that there could actually be some positive things on the end of this coronavirus time period that might actually make job searches
if there's anybody
easier.
to If there's anybody who knows how to pull something out of nothing, that's you. That is absolutely true. But thank you for your time with this and talking to me. I have a million more questions, but I don't have enough time in the day. So maybe we'll talk to you again. I'd like maybe you can be on with the full show
Awesome,
with
I'd
me and
love
Matt, and you can BS with us a little bit. I know you'd love that. But give your company a little plug here too.
So we're called look up Smooth Technology. Instagram is smooth.technology. You can see all of our weird different inventions. You'll see everything from random LED dresses and masks that we make to things like pneumatic punching gloves and chairs that'll make you bounce around with the remote control. We're always just looking to do the next weird thing. So check us out.
All right, and like I said, we'll probably see you on a podcasting future. We'll have you on again. Why not?
Awesome.
All right,
Awesome.
thank you.
Thanks, Paul.